On June 5th, John F. Kennedy's younger brother had won the California primary. More than a few analysts believed he had a legitimate chance now to win the presidency. 2 months earlier, RFK gave a speech in an Indianapolis black neighborhood on the night Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. Chief photographer John Simpson and I were there for a memorial to that speech many believe saved Indianapolis from violence in the week ahead. It is a park where Kennedy spoke. We titled this report, The Reverend and the Politician, a story of a year that changed our lives forever.
I have some very sad news for all of you.
I may not get there with you.
A cold and overcast day in a small park. People come together to remember a 7-minute-long speech that broke hearts but saved a city.
The 68 did a lot to our country.
He spoke about the anger and the need for revenge in a way that was so extraordinary that night because it was saying that's legitimate to feel that way.
It was a time filled with hope.
I had never known his memory of that speech, and everything he was doing subsequently was ingrained upon me.
With winter refusing to give way to spring, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. standing on the balcony of a Memphis motel. Robert F. Kennedy, in the infancy of a presidential campaign, trying to take the torch back that was taken from his brother.
Oh, Daddy talked about the divisions in our country. We need to end the divisions between black and white.
April 4th, 1968. A rally of more than 9,000 at Ball State University. A question was posed by a student that would later haunt RFK. That question, do you feel our civil rights leaders can stay safe in white America? About that same time,
Martin Luther King was shot today and killed.
RFK is told as he boards the plane from Muncie to Indianapolis. He would learn upon landing, King is dead.
Well, I felt we could have a very, very bad tragedy, and I was deeply worried about that.
Richard Lugar was 36 years old, just 4 months into office.
I told his folks, please don't come as you were thinking about 17th and Broadway. That is a very difficult situation.
Indianapolis police would not escort the Kennedy group into the 17th and Broadway predominantly black neighborhood.
My father spent a lot of time in African-American neighborhoods, in ghettos throughout our country, in the most difficult neighborhoods, most violent neighborhoods in our country.
Kennedy, nonetheless, said, I'm going. The small entourage approached a flatbed trailer. Carrie Kennedy was 8 years old on that April night.
These were his people, and he wanted to come and break this terrible news to them.
The crowd estimated in the thousands for what they thought would be a campaign rally. Long before smartphones, most unaware of what had happened. Wearing his brother's coat, as he often did, he faced the crowd.
I have some very sad news for all of you, and I think sad news for all of our fellow citizens and people who love peace all over the world. And that is that Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis.
Kennedy had scribbled notes, but he did not use them.
For those of you who are black and are tempted to be filled with hatred and mistrust of the injustice of such an act against all white people, I would only say that I can also feel in my own heart the same kind of feeling. I had a member of my family killed, but he was killed by a white man.
No one else that I know of, certainly no one in the campaign that year, could have handled that moment the way he did.
And 125 cities were burning that night. There had been riots in our country in 1967, 1968.
Close to 100 people died in the following days, but Indianapolis did not burn. Steve Bell, a former ABC News correspondent, arrived in Indiana just days after the RFK speech. Less than 2 months later, the California primary. Bell reported on-scene radio updates and found himself in Los Angeles on the stage, side by side with Robert Kennedy.
I was behind him in the hallway, and it was all full of supporters cheering, and they were carrying balloons, and balloons were popping. If you were 10 feet behind Bobby, you didn't hear the bullets.
Something terrible is happening in here. There's blood all over the floor. Senator Robert Kennedy. Senator Kennedy has been shot.
Two men often at odds during those troubled times of the 1960s. A time when black and white forces searched their souls on the issue of civil rights, often in conflict. Two men drawn together by the absurdity of history. Between the bookends of two heartbreaking months of 1968, two men reaching out as though they had finally found common ground.
Bring everybody together like the kids on that playground. It just reminds you of how they've been brought together historically. At the time, there was not that link, but it was provided in no small part by what happened here in Indiana.
There is undoubtedly in these times we live a fascination surrounding Robert F. Kennedy with so many what-if questions. Questions that still remain 50 years after RFK was on a quest to reclaim a presidency lost when his brother died. I'm Brad Bird, Eyewitness News.